सत श्री अकाल दोस्तों, मैं हूं सिमरन and I'm backing in with another Future Boulevard episode or podcast episode and welcome everybody ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਆਏ ਨੇ ਜਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੇ I guess from YouTube ਜਾਂ Facebook ਤੇ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ welcome everybody ਤੇ today ਆਪਾਂ I guess ਥੋੜਾ different type style podcast ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ we have a special guest today ਤੁਸੀਂ I guess title ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੜ੍ਹ ਹੀ ਲਿਆ ਹੋਣਾ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਅੱਜ ਆਪਣੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈਪੀ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਆ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਐਂਡ ਕਾਫੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਆਪਾਂ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਔਰ ਲਾਈਕ ਕਾਫੀ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੂਗਾ ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਜ because we're going to talk about Canada's energy sector and we're going to talk about ਕਿ ਆਪਣੇ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ what's happening right now ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਪਾਸਟ ਦੀ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ and how it's been I guess been set up now ਮੈਂ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗਾ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਹੈਪੀ ਮਾਨ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੋ ਐਵਰੀਬਾਡੀ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਹੈਪੀ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਜੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ
ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਤਿ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਸਰੋਤਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ everyone good evening we'll try our best to and enjoy our show today thank you so much
perfect ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ especially thank ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ reach out ਕੀਤਾ and we were going to reach out to you anyways and thank you for reaching out to us first and giving us an opportunity to do this ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ I guess I just want to introduce you to the people ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਖੁਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਿਊਸ ਕਰੋ ਆਮ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਮੋਸਟ ਫੇਸਬੁੱਕ ਲੋਕ ਵੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਨੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਲੇਕਿਨ from your own words who is Happy Mann?
My name is Hardyal Singh, but everyone knows me by the name of Happy Mann, and I've been living in Alberta for almost 30 years. I migrated from India about in 1990, and I started as an active politics from 96 onward. Since that, not only have done a politics on a provincial level, I also served on a community boards. I served on a Khalsa School board twice and once as a chairperson of the Khalsa School Calgary. I served as a president of the Sikh Council of Sikh Organization and presently also serving as a senior vice president of the Council of Sikh Organization and other community organizations. I try my best to be involved in the community, as well as I ran twice as a provincial, under the provincial banner for an MLA from the Wild Rose Party, served as a spokesperson of the Wild Rose Party and outreach director for it. So been involved in the community, been involved in the politics for almost good 24 years.
Well, ਜਿਵੇਂ ਸੁਣ ਲਿਆ ਕਾਫੀ ਵੱਡਾ ਰੈਜ਼ਮੇ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ and it's really impressive as well and ਆਪਾਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਟਰਾਈ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਕਿ we bring somebody on that's I guess knowledgeable and respectable in the community and they I guess they're known and Happy Mann isn't anybody less so thank you for coming on to our show. Let's dive straight into our I guess our topic today. Canada the energy sector ਬਾਰੇ ਥੋੜੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ I guess ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਜਦੋਂ approach ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ right you wanted to sort of discuss about how I guess the relationship between federal and provincial so ਉਹ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ I guess before we go into it ਆਪਾਂ ਥੋੜਾ past ਦੀ ਥੋੜੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਕਿ what has the I guess the energy sector been like in the past ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ flourish ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ ਆਪਣੀ oil and gas ਦੀ industry ਹੈਗੀ right I'm just using the energy sector ਕਿ ਆਪਾਂ renewable ਵੀ ਥੋੜਾ ਵਿੱਚ combine ਕਰ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਲੇਕਿਨ ਆਪਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਜਾਣਨਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ because I know you're very knowledgeable ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਕਾਫੀ knowledge ਰੱਖਦੇ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਦੀ so I just wanted to know from your own words what has the history been for Canada and perhaps Alberta ਦੀ ਵੀ in the oil and gas and the energy sector.
No doubt about it that energy sector is one of the largest in a way it's not like really largest but a good large portion of in a Canadian economy and when we're talking about energy sector Alberta was leading on it and of course the Saskatchewan continues on to the progress too but Alberta was much of the leader. The reality is that when we developed the energy, when back in Trudeau Senior's, the Honorable Prime Minister era, the energy sector has been revived in such a way that the prosperity of Alberta started in that. But when people talk about the energy sector, there used to be a coal mining also in Alberta. But then back the coal mining stopped. We started relying on gas as well as the oil, which is a crude, I mean to say. After that, what happens is that Alberta seems to be more focused on that energy, and that energy was thriving, no doubt about it. Alberta has also taken a good stance in development of that, and no doubt about it that time to time, as there was a need of a change, Alberta was very much in that path that they have looked after their changes from the climate perspective as well. But Alberta has taken a good hit from a couple of things. But let's talk about first Alberta energy sector itself. That almost more than 100 billion plus has been flown from energy sector's revenue in a taxes to Ottawa, which was a good prosperity. And with that, other provinces has been able to develop their infrastructure, schools, roads, we can name it. Because the unique part is that Canadian system has a system of equalization. The revenue goes to the feds, then feds distribute that revenue according to the income of the province and on the sharing system. When Alberta has put that much into the prosperity of Canada, of course, Alberta has their own prosperity as well, and Alberta becomes the first province as being a debt free province under Ralph Klein. If we look from that era, at one point, Albertans was at in the stage that why don't we develop the model which Alaska was doing, which Norway was doing, as keep that tax revenue into their buffer so we can use it for the future generations. And we start putting that revenue aside as well under the Ralph Klein era. The problem is that I have to be very honest that when we look from political side, the politicians in Alberta has been morely like into a conservative mind politics system. And when the province has that kind of a mindset into a provincial system that they are more into a conservative, the conservative system has been identified in political parties' view is to be more transparent, more economical aspect from that being self-managed, balanced budget, less spending, and on more into the corporate system and the tax structure to be lower so the business will come forward. But the lacking of there was a one lacking as well that as the economy was growing, so do the younger population was growing as well. And once the youngsters was also going into from a rural to the urban areas, their mindset to the new text of the education was changing as well. They were getting more curious to learn about climate change. They were getting more aware about the climate change. So, what the politician has lacked, in my opinion, is that they've been always focusing on the oil and gas energy, but somehow failed to understand that what the young generation has been feeling, how they've been looking into this, and for their job case as well. Such a prosperous state still have not bring the education when they have an education expenditure that the cost of the university education is still higher. Of course they are spending more into the per capita on health, but reality is that when you create that kind of atmosphere in a province on a system of conservatism, you have to also understand that the youngsters will also get aware of the historics of too. But if you look from the western aspect of it, the racism was another issue which got failed to address. When I'm why the reason I'm talking about this is because we have to go to Ottawa. That Ottawa, when we will talk between Alberta and Ottawa, we will see a different system that why Ottawa is thinking different, why Ottawa is treating different, right? Because in the education system, things were always on a tolerance mode, not on an acceptance mode. And tolerance is a fight within. Tolerance will never give you a complete closure. So the education system under the conservative system was so close knit, and they were focused on just one thing, the job and energy sector. And when any population who has a good job, they've been thriving and their lifestyle is good, they often do forgot that what is happening in their surroundings. And during the bad times, people start looking differently. And when the generation gaps, every 22nd year, 22 years to 30, 24 years, the generation gaps come different. So then the new generation in the energy sector, they are thinking very differently. Plus, if you look from the energy is a global issue. Yes, Alberta is a producer, but we have bigger players like Saudi Arabia. Venezuela used to be a bigger player at one point. Russia is a bigger player. So we cannot control the energy sector ourselves because the trading is still in a US dollar. And we were also relying on our biggest trading partner, which is across the south of our border, and all the pipelines which was Alberta oil was going, that is TXL 1, 2, 3, they're all going to the United States. So the refineries are not here. So we lack to the byproduct of the crude, and refineries get somewhere else. And when we used to get the finished product, we were still paying the higher cost of it. So that is the nutshell from Alberta perspective. When you go to Ottawa side, that is different. Ottawa got changed into the government. We have seen 10 to 12 years of conservative governments. We have seen the liberal governments. They all rely, of course, on the tax of prosperity, on the taxes of Albertans, no doubt. But often when the conservative use the language that Ottawa is against Alberta, they are mostly referring only when the liberal government is in Ottawa. My point is always, I agree Ottawa is against Alberta, but it is all the governments in Ottawa. You cannot say that whenever there is a conservative government in Ottawa, they are in favor of Albertans, and when there is a liberal government in Ottawa, they are not in favor. Yes, Ottawa is. I will share 3 4 examples with you why I'm saying that when we use that phrase, we use Ottawa, not a party, but often the provincial parties or often the conservative system blames the liberals only. For now, if you look in the past, when Stephen Harper and current Premier Jason Kenney was in Ottawa, Ottawa, you have to look this from a 2 different angles, Simran. Is one is the visionary part. If we see these leaders were visionary enough and they were from Alberta, they should have used each and every movement they got to, to do a fair share so Albertans won't feel that. So in their tenure, why the East energy has not been developed? Then sometimes they give this that because of the rules and regulations, then why didn't you change it? Third part is there is, we call it as a TUC, Trans Utility Corridor. Trans Utility Corridor is where our roads are run, where the railways and all that. So that is a jurisdiction of the federal system. Why that line is not being established to East? Even today, if you look from the conservative point, they are more focused on TXL 5 vetoed by the current US President, Mr. Biden, but they are not ready to talk about East Pipeline because they know that Quebec, Ontario, the 2 biggest provinces, who is the key player to make the government in Ottawa, They are against Alberta energy, so their tone is different. Same when we talk as a Trans Mountain now to the west. Trans Mountain to the west is basically now whom they're saying the liberals who are anti-oil, they are the one who spent the dollars, they bought it and they are building it. So it is not about the party platform, although it is, but in reality is that any and every government who goes to Ottawa, for them Alberta doesn't matter much because Alberta cannot control the outcome of the election. The outcome of the election, that who's going to governing Ottawa, will be always based upon Quebec and Ontario. Looking those aspects, I often say, yes, I agree that Ottawa is against Alberta, but it is not a specific, you can say it is liberal against against Alberta. Now we have to look at a second sector of Alberta, which was a great sector, which is agriculture sector.
Right.
If you, I don't know if our listeners will see that what is supply chain management system. I'm going to give a small example that every one animal who produces a milk is like a tagged animal. You have a taxi license, it's kind of a license to that.
Yeah. Mhm.
The government is controlling that how much milk you're going to produce. So there is not a free trade system within the country for their own citizens that they can freely produce what is even used on a daily life, whether it's some milk, whether it's your poultry. That sector also got controlled by the bigger companies. So agriculture sector of Alberta also got very much controlled through the supply chain management. Then we go to the third system, which was, can we, or is there a possibility that we could explore Alberta's prosperity into a different way? Yes, we could have. If you look from that, Alberta do have a 6 months of a window from a hot weather, which we say as a summer. Even if not a 6 months, we can say we have a good 5 months. If you look from a temperature perspective, there is in south part of Alberta, there is a called as a skip cropping. They skip the crop every year, whether they grow beans, then next time they grow corn and all that, and the potatoes. But if you look from Punjab as an example,
Yep.
Punjab University of Agriculture University of Punjab has developed a potato crop which you can take within 60 days. They have developed the crop of corn which you can develop within 45 to 60 days. So why the south part of Alberta is still struggling to be in a skip cropping when within the 5 months of period they could be into a double cropping?
Right. Yeah.
Then there is another sector of that, which is a riparian law system. If you talk about the water flow, Alberta water flow system is so controlled on the basin system of discharging that your agriculture sector sometimes feels what we are doing. So the vision of the political people who've been governing in Alberta from the past, their vision was not in that aspect to learn something from a new blood or from a new politicians. Whenever you try to bring those things, they always fear that something is knocking on their iron wall
And
because they've been tamed and trained that way, Simran.
I just wanted to ask as well, why do you think that is, right? Is it because they're stubborn, or like what's the reason behind it, right? Basically, because I'm assuming that everybody wants best for Canada, right? It doesn't matter what party you belong to. Ultimately, you want to do what's best for the country. And so, what do you think the reason was for this?
Reason, as I said, was a basic of acceptance because they have used let me be very blunt. Political parties has used the if I'm say I personally hate this word ethnic. I'm a proud Canadian, but my look has nothing to do with my service to the state. People could be wearing kulla, people could be wearing turban, they could be wearing a hat, or people could be having a unshorn hair or unshorn beard. Your look and your nationality is a two different issues. Today we all are Canadians. And I often say in my political life that my wish is to live and die for Canada. And as being Albertans, my wish is my Alberta first. But when you go and really experience in what the political parties is, they needs you as a tokens. They are not ready to share an actual round table kitchen cabinet with you. If you look from, I can give you prime examples which we recently experienced in. When there was a flooding in the north side of Alberta, the treatment was different. Although we have a minister from Northeast Calgary, but when the hail damage in Northeast comes, the treatment is different. And it has been known publicly. It's not me saying, it is authentic and it's on that. Same as in a federal, I can tell you, when the comes to, let's say, talk for both sides, when the conservative talks, they talks about China today, and they are so much worried about China as being a human rights issue in China for the other peoples and other, but they don't want to talk about the human rights situation in India. When it comes to India, they will say, we don't want, it is not our responsibility, or we should not be interfering in their internal matters. But then at the same time, they are okay to interfere in the Middle East interferes when it comes to Israel.
Yeah. If
When
I
it
may
comes
just
to
intervene
China, they
really
can
quickly,
interfere.
I just want to just
So the
mention something really
hypocrisy
quickly.
is at the best, because they often see from what is their boat base, because their boat base in Alberta wants to hear a different words, so they are saying different words. Their boat base in east, in Quebec and in Ontario, they wants to hear something different, they will say something different. So now my question is that, was Harper and Kenny not visionary enough that they failed to put a east pipeline? Either they were, or either were they not visionary enough when they were the last person who negotiate the payment, which we called as a transfer of payments equalization formula. They are the one who negotiated that. So if you are the one who negotiated the formula for the equalization, then why you are telling liberals today that they are not fair to Alberta? So that means every politician, they are for their personal best interest and the interest for their party to make a government. And whenever they are on that governing seat, Alberta has been ignored, doesn't matter which party it is. So that is what from the business aspect is. Same we are seeing from oil and gas. What we have seen is we were feeling that the transition is happening. We were feeling that the transition is going to come, because if you look from the youngsters' point of view, they are very much into this, that they are worried about the climate change. They're worried about their welfare and well-being for their futures. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But when we talk about job sector, we are also killing the big job sector part, right?
Yeah.
But we are giving everything as in a wrong examples when we say Alberta will develop because the India will buy the oil from us. Like, let's be clear. The the transportation from Saudi Arabia to India and all the refineries being in the Gujarat side, which is closer from that ocean, is much more cheaper to bring the crude from India, from Canada to India. So they are giving the wrong example sometime. Of course, United States is our biggest partner and they are the consumer as well. but the transition is written on the wall. So when Premier is gambling the Alberta's taxpayers' money, $1.5 billion as a direct investment and close to $6 billion as in a government guarantee loans, with almost $7 billion of Albertan taxpayer money, you could put so many different industries, which could be a future use industries, and Albertans could be working. So it's a mindset which has to change. And now let's talk about Ottawa itself. The why the Ottawa is not fair with Alberta is that Ottawa is basically doesn't matter whether it's liberal or whether it is conservatives. I don't see NDP coming that soon to the power from my political analysis
Right.
because their mindset is too different, which is still not appealing to the broader voter sector, right? But when we talk about Ottawa, Ottawa will invest more money in Quebec. Ottawa will invest more money in Ontario. They will do more bailouts in those areas. But if we look from a population wise, in present time and in the last 2 3 years, Ottawa was quite generous. They have sent a good chunk of money for the abandoned wells to be cleaned, for green LRTs. They were quite generous. If you compare from the money flown from Ottawa, but within the Harper and Kenny era for infrastructure, and the money flown from Ottawa for infrastructure and other things from liberal era, you will see the difference.
Yeah. Mhm.
But was Alberta not ignored? I absolutely agree. Alberta was ignored because if something happened to Quebec industry, if happening to Ontario industry, they will jump in soon. So now the focus is that knowing that Ottawa itself doesn't matter. If people think that bringing Aaron O'Toole conservative tomorrow to Ottawa will be a miracle in Alberta's industry or that will change something, no, it won't, because I have not seen O'Toole's clear stance that if the conservative government will be under the O'Toole's government and we will build Energy East, there is no such thing. In fact, he said Energy East was not on the table when he met the first time to the Premier of Quebec. There is nothing they will say that we will demolish the, uh, for our agriculture sector, we will demolish the supply chain management and we will have increased the productivity in the sector of agriculture in Alberta because all those big fishes are from Ontario and Quebec. They will not allow them. So what is for Ottawa? What is for Alberta then? If Alberta wants to thrive, which we should, I'm Albertan first. Alberta has to manage their own affairs. When you're saying manage their own affairs, it is living within Alberta,
Mhm.
but still having a Quebec style autonomy. You need to be autonomous. We have to be taking control over the system of the things which we should. And of course, doesn't matter whoever goes to Ottawa as a next government, that is the will of the public. But Albertans needs to understand that they've been kept in the dark from a long time from an educational perspective of the historics. If you think that today the discrimination or the racism doesn't exist, especially the institutional racism, it does exist. And you know why it exists? Because in Canada, they the students has not been taught that World War I, World War fought with which money. India's GDP before the Brits take over India was at 23.6% at the world GDP. That's what India's GDP was. When Brits take over India, India put at least the major more than 60 billion sterling pound towards fighting those wars. And when the Brits left India, India was a negative 4% GDP. No
Wow.
wonder I often say, no wonder the sun never set in the Brits' rule, because even the God won't trust the Brits in dark. That is the reason. But the people have never been taught that what contribution the Sikhs, the Muslims, especially from South Asia, has put into this country. That's the reason, because of these political parties, they've been teaching and taming their vote base on the basis of ethnicity, religion, discriminations. That's the reason this country is not pulling together and trying to take a knowledge from those individuals who could put a right mind together for the 21st century, back in 20th century, and today for the future, for 22nd century. In today, we are feeling that. And why it's feeling? Because the education system was based upon tolerance.
Right.
When you go to the institutions of education, nobody today, even in the textbooks, they are preaching and teaching acceptance. They are still teaching and preaching tolerance.
Right.
How could you bring the society together as a Canadian? How could you bring the society together as an Albertans when your whole machinery is trying to divide them on the name of the religion, culture, color, and language?
Yeah.
The
And
prosperity of the country will not come forward, Simran.
before you go on, I also wanted to sort of expand on a little bit what you mean by acceptance versus tolerance. Like, what is the difference that you see with that?
The acceptance is that you are accepting the system as is, the person as is, then you don't have to put that person in the corner. The when we see from the different mindset of this societal system, the politicians of a different mindset, they have not experienced in the politics of the world. They've been experienced in what is happening here within this country. When you have the when you have a migration, people migrated from all over the world. You have the best talent came abroad as well. The talent to understand the difference between the World War I, what happened, World War II, what happened. Like, be very frank, how many of those youngsters today knows the contribution of the Indian GDP in World War II?
I mean,
And
I'll be honest, I didn't. Right. Yeah.
how many of them know that was if there was a war today, the Japan has been barred from having being a nuclear power. The struggle being in the Middle East, not to have those Middle East countries on a nuclear power, but in reality, who were two people who ever used the nuclear power in the world? You think the dignity of the South Asian people was at stake when they were fighting World War II? It happened in Pearl Harbor. It happened in Hiroshima. So they have divided the country on the tolerance basis that you have to tolerate these people. They have developed all these institutions as a Asia Watch, Human Rights Watch. They have developed this institution for the name of the. I will give you the another example which will people will understand from 100 years before. What happened in a Simran, that may maybe put a different metaphor in place of acceptance and tolerance is
Hmm.
the world was used to be ruled. If you go back to the centuries of Indian era, what I'm saying, the South Asian era, because that was a vast developed civilization at that point, right? If you look from that, the religious was in a control even over the king. Then, slowly and gradually, when the power got shifted from the religious people to the kings, there was a word developed. There was a word which was developed as a priest. When slowly and gradually, when the kings and the kingdoms, these monarchy started losing the power to the democracy, they developed the word public servant. But in reality, today, every youngster or every mediocre of the 50s, They were always looking the god from the priest and the king from the public servant. Are they
mm,
really treating the politician as a public servant? No. A simple MLA who has zero contribution to the society in the past of his life, all of a sudden that person got a party's nomination. Now he or she is elected official. You will see people wants to invite them all over in every functions. Because why? Because they are not seeing that individual as a public servant. They want to see, because the mindset is they want to see them still as a king. That is a problem. Because we have taken the politician to that standard where they have forgotten that they are a public servant. And when you think the Henry V's language of the politician, it is same as that they've been gruntedly thinking that they are the ultimate power of controlling the public. That's why they play with the taxpayers' money. And unfortunate part is that the taxpayer itself, they don't exercise their right during the vote. They go by the party system. And my fear is that that the politics will be the next organized religion, Simran, if we don't give a wake up call.
yeah,
If you are a liberal, you will be considered thinking as a liberal mind. If you're an NDP, you should be thinking as in a line of the NDP. If you're conservative, you're thinking as being a conservative. But nobody is telling to have a thought process which will be a mindset of a difference between a right and a wrong, a thought process of fighting for the righteousness for the public and the taxpayer money. For example, in Alberta, if you go, this present government has established a war room called as energy war room for a $30 million.
yeah, yeah.
Now
Mhm.
you can see the government who is conservative, whose motto and whose always the preaching is that be transparent, being not only transparent but also accountable. And a $30 million, they are saying we cannot give any single audit to the public where that 30 million is going to be spent. So what a hype of a hypocrisy within those party system, that when it comes to their own doings, they don't want to be transparent, they don't want to be accountable, but they want to be ruled to the public on the name of the accountability. So every parties, doesn't matter which party it is, they are keeping the public on a mindset of tolerance. So the mindset of the public should be on a acceptance of the doers who has a wish to do something for the sake of the nation, the doers who has a wish to do for the something for the sake of their province and their country. We don't need a cowards, we need a courageous. I have to quote Moa Misra from an Indian parliamentarian who just gave a recent speech in an Indian parliament about courage and a cowardness. I think the Canadian parliamentarian of every level should really think whether the service to the state is because of the courage or because of the cowardness. I think in Canadian political system also, the hype is of the cowardness, not of the courageousness, because they want to rule the country. So they are so being doing the things which please their vote base in a different part of the country. They are not being blunt and honest enough to even first themselves, even second to the public, even third to the nation and the constitution. when when the pillar of the democracy, we the people, has been shaken up by these politicians, because they want to have us as a public to live in a tolerance, not to live in acceptance. Because when we will start living in a nation of the acceptance, all these problems of which we have created today will go away, and we will have a new version of the public service, of the courageousness, not of the cowardness.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to unpack here because you've talked a lot about the energy sector, and then we went on to talking about how the system is working and how it's honestly, from what you've explained to me, it's pretty clear that it has been working against Alberta, and not even just against Alberta, around the country as a whole, because there perhaps is some other agenda behind it. So I wanted to, with that in mind, right, I want to ask you as well, what do you propose that Alberta does, now that you've presented with all this information? Where does Alberta stand? What can Alberta do to, I guess, rise again? Because of COVID, it's been a heavy hit as well. Lots of jobs have been lost, not just in the healthcare and sector, but also just everywhere, right? In the energy sector, especially. So, what do you propose that Alberta should do?
If I have to say in one word, get rid of the career politicians, bring a fresh blood in, who is not thinking, or he or she is not thinking to be aligning for the party line and do what the party wants to do, because party has to take a funds, and a fund comes from the big corporations, and then your leader controls those other representatives of the as an MLAs or MPs. So one word is, get rid of this, all the politicians who've been there for a reason of serving themselves. And if we look from a doer aspect, what we should do,
Hmm.
we should sit together, bring a good mindset people, and think what is good in NDP policy, what is good in a liberal policy, what is good in other parties policy, and develop one policy which is workable for Albertans and for nation. For example, when we talk about immigration, we should not be talking about immigration from the perspective of being seen as somebody as from a different countries is coming over and taking over this nation. No, we should be talking about immigration as a need, because of the population base is needed, or because of the economical reasons of being needed. When we look from the oil and gas sector perspective, we
Hmm.
have to look what our youngsters are seeing. We have to look from what our seniors has been needed. We have to look from that service space, that yes, we need our energy sector to be thriving, and we need a pipelines to go through. But at the same time, we have to respect the will and wishes of every Albertans, whether they are 18-year or 16-year old. Thirdly, we have to bring the education system as an affordability. We have to spend, we give money to the bigger corporations on the names of, give them a tax exemption so they'll come and develop more energy sector. But in the past year and a half, it failed. The 4.5 billion dollar was given to those people, and what we have seen is a layoffs and layoffs. So that means that sector, that kind of approach has been failed. Then we look from a health sector. We know we spend higher amount of per capita on our healthcare system. Then we should look from that, our seniors needs to be looked after, and if their affordability is not there, they should not be penalized because they can't afford the healthcare system. Healthcare system should be available. Emergency means not to give us get a service after 6 hours. Emergency mean emergency. So we will have to develop a different healthcare system, not to please our loved ones. As I was reading article few days ago, that this new COVID testing uh, has been given to one of the favorite person of who is close to the minister. This kind of a hypocritical uh, favors, or I can say bribery, has to be stopped. So we have to look if the national pharmacare is a suitable thing to have. We have to look from that aspect, that a fund follow the patient system means fund follow the service system has to be established if we have to create uh, more healthcare systems prosperity into the society. But it should be affordable. It should be under the healthcare act of that. It should be the government controls. Then we have to look from agriculture sector. We have to sit together and see whether our weather has been suitable for what other products. I was reading at one time, I think it's very suitable for opium, which has been widely used in the medicine from a pharmaceutical place, right? We have to have more processing system. For example, our lentils, our peas, they go from Alberta, Saskatchewan to India, I think through Dubai or so, and then getting processed and coming back here for the consumption. Why can't we consume it here? So we have to look from our agriculture sector. Same for education. These career politicians will not do any good to Alberta because they have their masters to serve. And if we look from a fresh politicians, and then they will say, I often used to hear from Ralph Farah when I enter first. Simran's a good knowledge that when I enter politics back with Ralph Klein, and I've been told by Ralph Klein that Happy, you are too vocal for us because your facts and figures are very scary to my caucus. So the point is, the reason I'm making this point is that's what the acceptance is. Sometimes these politicians will not accept you because they see a different things. So if really we have to put the public first, we have to put Alberta first, we have to put Canada first, then the public has to really come forward and they have to start voting, not along with the party line. They have to start voting for the person who they think is a deserving person, who can sometimes, it's good to have an independent voice than having a party voice, because it will bring and create more awareness. So we have to create a new era. We have to create a new knowledge into the political system. And again, that one word is get rid of this career politician and bring the fresh blood in, so we will serve the public which is needed.
And I think that's wonderful that you bring those ideas, because it's honest, sometimes it's difficult for the voter to understand, but that's when they have to do their research, they have to understand, and then, like you said, uh, you really shouldn't just vote because somebody's from a certain party. Of course that might play a role into your voting, but there should be other factors involved where you look at the individual as well. I just want to ask you this as well. I think I've asked a lot of the people that came on before as well. I think I asked Jyoti and just Raj Havan as well. uh, do you? So before I do that, I just want to give context. I give this to everybody as well. Usually, what happens is in a lot of the households, we do sort of like a household voting thing, right? Where a certain household will vote for a single person or like a single party. That doesn't really happen in my own household, but I know it does happen because I've had friends that told me about this, and it happens in India a lot as well. So, do you think that's a good thing, or do you think everybody should make their own informed decisions, right? Or do you think somebody should just trust the main person in the house and trust that you, I guess, discussed everything and then collaborated and you guys vote for a certain person? And also, second part of the question: should you be voting for the party or the person itself?
uh, I will share this a personal experience when I ran from a McCall as a Wild Rose candidate. And after the debate, because first I was feeling that stigma, I experienced that stigma myself, that people used to come and say, you know what, Happy, you've been raised and born and educated in India, we should have somebody from a Canadian kid who's well educated and who could speak well. And because what I have seen is in the past, yes, public has experienced in those kind of politicians whose their political knowledge and their language skill were different. But when I had that debate, after that debate, one of the youngsters from the university called me and she said, "Uncle, we want to meet you." And I said, "Where?" And they were in Falcon Ridge. And that youngster came to me and she said, "You know what? We've been told first that he's an Indian educated person, but today we listened to your debate, and I want to just tell you that we want to vote for you." That was so humbling. But the reality is this, Simran, that we have created this stigma ourselves, and then that's how our household voting goes. It goes to such a unfashionable way that oh sade chache da munda thai da munda, because we know them, because we were related, because somebody told us. I think it's rely on the youngsters now. The onus is on their shoulder that they should research, they should vote for the person first. Of course the party comes there too, but for the person. For example, today I will give you another prime example. I was on a radio show at the BC and they asked me a question that for the farming, the farmers agitation in India. They were saying, what you see a difference between today, that every politician is with the farmer agitation from Canada, but what you see, and my answer was to them is, this is a polished language which has been given to them by their party because everyone is using this language by saying a peaceful protest should be given to them, and it's a basic fundamental rights of a peaceful protest. But my question to him was, is this agitation really relying on the peaceful protest, or it has gone towards the basic human rights violation? But I
We've
bet you
crossed the
not
line.
even a single politician from any party has dared up till today to go and file the complaint to the international community. Not a single politician has wrote a letter to the Amnesty International. Not a single politician has wrote a letter to the Asia Human Rights Watch or the United Nations and telling them that this is a huge violation of the human rights is going on the Indian soil. No politician up till today has reached out to the Indian consulate and told them that what you are doing is a basic gross violation of the Indian of the human rights violation. But everyone is talking about what? You know what? It should be a peaceful protest should be allowed. So what I'm trying to tell to the youngsters is that please come forward. Don't think what this politician, we do get happy as a community. ਸਾਡੇ ਲੋਕ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੇ right way, ਉਹਨੇ ਵੀ ਹਾ ਦਾ ਨਾਰਾ ਮਾਰਿਆ, ਉਹਨੇ ਵੀ ਹਾ ਦਾ ਨਾਰਾ ਮਾਰਿਆ, because they are used to of the vocabulary of it. They cannot see between the line why they are using that vocabulary. So what you expect from those kind of a politicians who are covered enough to use the language which they want to use, because they don't want to tell them that your courage is enough and tell them that this is a violation of the human rights and this is my stand. I bet if any politician will cross those party lines and come together and tell the government that this is what the reality is, it's a gross violation. So why I have given you these three examples is that the public at large has to educate themselves. Then within the family, it should be a good discussion that why, if you want to vote for that person, why, or if you want to vote for that party, why. And if the public will not take a responsibility to bring a well deserving candidates into the power, then it will be the same what I explained in the past. ਫਿਰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਬਲਿਕ ਸਰਵੈਂਟ ਤੋਂ ਰਾਜਾ ਲੱਭੀ ਜਾਓ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਰਾਜਾ ਹੀ ਲੱਭੇਗਾ, ਪਬਲਿਕ ਸਰਵੈਂਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਭੇਗਾ. You will never find a public servant from a king, because king has been used. They've been entitled in their way. That's why we use this cronies and entitled language in a political system, that these politicians has been entitled enough to rule the public, not to serve the public. And if you want that somebody who can represent you as being a service industry of being a servant, then you have to change your mindset and start voting, not where your parents, your uncle or auntie is telling. You do your own research. You make sure you have a deserving person who can raise the voice, who has a knowledge base of your, because now the politics is worldwide. It's not just, if even you want to enter into Alberta politics, you have to have a knowledge of the spectrum of the globe, what is happening. Then only you could succeed in serving your community, because global village, the every single country and province is a global village now, Simran, and you have to start reading the next chapter, as I mentioned, the chapter of acceptance, the chapter of public service, the chapter of not being letting the politician create a politics as a next religion.
Yeah,
Let them
yeah.
create the politics as a next harmony of uniting together, not dividing them on the basis of your personal theory of the leader.
Well, that's very, very profound, and I'm happy you said that. And I want to, I guess, relate to personal story as well. I have some friends, and they don't vote. There are a few of them. They don't like to vote. They're like, we don't like to associate with anything. But then they do like to complain, right? They'll be like, oh, come on, like, they're university students, right? They'll be like, they
Mm.
increased our tuitions. Like, I'm like, but you didn't vote, so that means you didn't really contribute to, I guess, going one way or the other. I personally feel like it's really weird that they feel like they don't want to vote, but then they also feel entitled to complain, right? And I think that comes to back to you make sure that you do your research and you do vote for the people that are deserving. Like you said, deserving is a key, I guess, a term that we should be using. Deserving, because like you said, there's those are that are kings, and then there's those that are the actual I guess community workers, and they actually want to help and not just want to use it as their career. Now, before we move on, I just wanted to backtrack a little bit as well and talk about a little bit more about oil and gas. I hope you're okay with that. uh, I know it's been a big topic about either keeping like just staying in the oil and gas industry or leaving it all behind and then focusing on the future. And I guess a little bit of what the liberals are doing is doing a little bit of both, right? Doing oil and gas, and also doing like the renewable energy sector as well. What do you feel like, I guess, should be done for diversifying this? Do you feel like there needs to be any diversity? Because I think we talked about in the very beginning, we talked about Alaska, right? How Alaska has flourished their economy, right? I think it's like you said, it's closely related because Alaska is a state of the United States, and Alberta is, I guess, a province of Canada. We're looking at those two examples. Do you think we should be perhaps following their example and do something in that terms? What do you think we should be doing right now with the oil and gas industry in Alberta? Because I know we talked a lot about how we're treated unfairly and whatnot. I think that is what it is, but we still need some sort of solution, right? What do you think needs to be done next?
I think what needs to be done is, before we go into it, I will tell you, if you look at the this recent United States election, and if you look from the map of blue and red, that will give you a very different narrative of when you start from the BC sector, from the California sector, going all the way by the coastal and going to east, everything is blue. When you go from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and part of the Manitoba sector towards the south, it's all red. Why I'm giving you that example is that the propaganda machinery is so heavy on both sides. They are not allowing you to put a balanced approach. Alberta was in the same, we were putting a money aside for a rainy days, as an Alaska model or Norway model. But then the politicians start spending. If you know about Ralph's bucks, dollars gone $400 per person. These politicians get habitual in spending, and then nothing was done in the past to really look from a diversification. As I said, agriculture sector was controlled by supply chain management. Oil sector was controlled by the bigger companies, and all those companies, what they were doing, they were taking your oil. And when you see as an investment, when Harper and Kenny opens a multinational company's investment into the oil sectors and all that, those they are the tax sharks people. They were taking the advantage of the Alberta taxpayers and take the crude from here, and then take all the advantage and bring the fine product back and make money out of it. So
I mean, they're a
Alberta
business,
has to
right? They
take a
want to make
very
profit.
yeah, Alberta has to take a very balanced approach. that we still need, because oil and gas is not going to die for 15, 20 years easily. It's
Okay.
going to be
Wow.
still a need for 10 to 15 years. We should still take a benefit of that, but we need to understand that, for example, let's take this prime example which I gave before, for 1.5 billion dollar investment by Jason Kenney into the Key XL. Why couldn't that government wait till the election was over? But their propaganda machinery was thinking that Trump's going to win regardless, and we're going to thrive. Well, it's good to have that kind of a drive, but if you would have taken a balanced approach by thinking this is a taxpayer's money, you would have not thrown that money in the drain. Same in the politician in the past. They have not taken a balanced approach. Same in a healthcare. I I'm a big advocate of having a central healthcare system being a public funded healthcare system, but I know there is lots of flaws in that. It needs to be changed, that the emergency means an emergency, not sitting for 6 hours. When you look from, we have given a chance to the NDP government in the past, and that government also have a set agenda, not a balanced approach. And if you go to the conservative, they are doing so. So what I'm trying to tell is, oil and gas sector is there for us. We could take advantage of that prosperity, but it has to be a balanced approach, looking in mind that we have to diversify also. And whether we have to diversify towards the hydrogen, whether we have to, now they're opening up the coal mines again, and the whole new controversy started in Alberta again. One side there is an environmentalist, one side there is a pro business. Why can't we find a middle ground to it? Who's gonna buy our coal, where the coal's gonna go? And if it's gonna go to China, then, or it's gonna go to India, it's gonna go where? Which country is putting a energy plants? Why, if we have that kind of a energy system? So all the system needs to be balanced. But the fear is, how could you bring a balanced approach when you don't allow the balanced person to enter into a political life? And if that balanced politicians comes to the public as being an independent, and we ignore them, and we don't want to vote for him. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to say is, we need a balanced approach. This career politician has to go away. The fresh blood, the fresh approach with the experienced individuals has to come together and start looking beyond and above of the political lines of the party, and start a brand new and develop a new uh, as a mandate system, that what and how we're going to do so this country, this nation, this province will prosper. And let's look and sit together and see where the flaws are, where we need to have some changes, and what we need to do to make some changes.
Uh, we actually have a question from Rajesh Farmaji. I'm going to put it on the screen. You guys can see it. It's not. I think that's the entire question. So he's saying, Mr. Mann, why don't we diversify on windmills projects to generate energy? Has any part of Alberta ever, thought on that part?
If you travel towards the south, you will see, Rajiv, it's lots of windmills are there towards the borders. Yes, it's lots of windmills are going there, and yes, they are producing the energy. Secondly, is uh, I'm in a balanced approach system, that we have to look from two angles: the life of the windmill, the structure of the windmill, the lithium, the battery which has to be produced, how those get mined, and what is the total CO2 has been produced totally to make one windmill. And because you need foundries to do that, all that. The reason I'm saying that is, sometimes we just take a rhetoric of it by saying uh, these things, right? But if you look from Canada aspect, we produce less CO2, and we have more trees planted within Canada than any other nation. So CO2 has been produced by India, by China, and other countries. Of course, it's polluting the climate, and climate's going to be polluted all over the world. But Alberta is taking a big hit on that part. Secondly, is if you look from Alberta environment site, Rajiv, you will see that how the winds, the flow of the wind and the mountains, and which sector of Alberta's will get most wind, because windmills has been designed to put us that way. That does not mean that I'm against the windmills, but if you look at calculated CEO2 system, because what we are saying is create a windmill or create a solar energy. So we have to get away from this traditional system. Of course, we have to have a balanced. I said that before. I'm in a favor of the balanced approach. But did ever somebody really did an analysis that to have one windmill, how much you have to go through and what kind of a pollution you have to create that one windmill, and the life of the windmill, and after that when that windmill will be stopped producing, how are we gonna put them back into a recycling? For example, a small pipeline of oil and a gas. So that's why there is a thousands and thousands of abandoned wells in Alberta because if you decommission those wells, Simran, those pipes takes a tons of money to recycle. So the knowledge base of the politician, the knowledge base of the public, the politician is either they don't want to give a knowledge to the public, or the public don't want to take it. I think what we are doing is we are always shooting in the dark. I always encourage the youngsters and other public that we need to be informed voters. Don't mark my words what I said today. Go and analyze yourself and do some research yourself. And of course, I often say I'm not born as a saint. I'm also a human being. I have made mistakes in life. I may made a mistakes again, but as long as we have three uh, things in our life, is that a mistake admitted should be a mistake corrected. But if you will not admit your mistake, you will never correct your mistake, and mistake corrected has to be forgotten and forgiven by the public. So we continue on because we have set a different base into a political system, that we don't want to go beyond and above our personal knowledge. We don't want to take a time, especially the social media is sometime you rely on what has been what you are seeing. So take some time. It was a good question, Rajiv, but reality is lots of windmills there and the research is done. And of course it has to be a balanced approach, but it has to be well balanced approach based upon the economy which has to run. Today, if Alberta's budget is not balanced because we are not creating enough revenue, and our premiers past policies, I'm not saying every individual of the UCP is bad, but sometimes when you have a micromanaged leader who wants to do everything the way he or he thinks he's all the right things to do, then often you get wrong. I think what we have done is in the past we have lost quite a bit of Alberta's taxpayer dollar in the mismanagement of the entitlement of the political spectrum of their uh, thinking. So a balanced approach is needed. That's what my take is in this. And balanced approach cannot come from these entitled and this career politicians. Balanced approach will always come from individuals who put their country, their nation first of their own thought process.
That's actually a really good point that you made. I think a little bit in the middle of the answer, we were talking about the geography also matters a lot when you do install windmills. Rajivji actually had some stats. He was saying that I think Ontario has about 40% of the windmills in the country, and then Quebec has 30, and Alberta only has about 900 turbines. And I think they gave numbers as well: 26, 2,663 was windmills in Ontario, and then 1991 in Quebec. So uh, I guess they're trying to say that the other parts of the country, they are putting up windmills, but in Alberta, we only have a fraction of what they're doing. And I guess you did answer that a little bit. It depends on geography as well. But I guess if you want to expand more on that, you can.
Absolutely, Rajiv. If you think that is there a possibility to diversify more on a windmill and solar? Yes, there is. Absolutely, there is a more need to diversify within Alberta too. But reality is again this: whether we are doing it for a reason of diversifying, or we are doing it just a reason of the scare has been created on the name of CEO2. If it has been done on the name of that we're going to diversify the energy sector with wind and all that, of course it is. With the windmill system, if you look at the transmission, I will give you another example. If you look at your energy bill, you will see the consumption charges as well as the transmission charges as well as the management charges. It comes to almost 40-60. So the cost of production is very different whether you do the production on the oil gas basis or from the windmill basis or from solar basis. It's a transmission charges. It's the companies who's making those that. I think if we do, I think that it should be approach of the, if I look at the European train system, for example, the transportation system of the Europe. What they have done is they have taken a fast trains, but they have developed that from the villages going to the cities, so people can still live in a small towns and still can commute easily and fastly to go and work on a bigger cities. Same here. If we do create a geographically based energy system from a windmill and from a solar, so our production is there and our transmission is locally done. And let's say, for example, all those windmills in the south, and if we do a smaller transmission system, set it up to have that feeding Lethbridge area or other Tabor area and all that, maybe your transmission cost and maintenance cost is lower. But when you keep on giving to the big grid, then your transmission cost will remain the same. Same as your when you put your solar system on your house, of course you're gonna heat and you're gonna produce your own energy for your house, and now you have a ability to even sell to the grid, right? So which is more easy? The more easy is to put a solar system on your more effective will be putting your solar system on your, so you're not getting charged on your grid system too. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's a balanced approach we have to create, Rajiv, and I'm not denying the fact what you're saying is, of course, the diversity is a need. And when there is not only a need, when there is a establishment of the mindset which has there, and no doubt that establishment of the mindset is that a diversification is needed, climate change is there, and yes, we have to look from that angle.
I guess so. थोड़ा मैं follow up question पूछना चाहूँगा कि around the world, right? Is there an example that we see that they have, I guess, starting to transition and then done well in setting up renewable energy, right? They have windmill set up, they have solar panel set up, and is there anybody that's leading right now in the world with that regard?
Europe is doing a great work if you look at a central Europe, but you have to also have to look that the price of the energy has been so high too. Okay, and then if you look at from that aspect, that when they started 20 years ago, that transition period, some of those wind fields are decommissioning now. Some of those solar panels has been decommissioning now because there's a lifespan to it, right? Whether it's a windmill or whether it's a solar panel, it's a lifespan. So when you have to look from that aspect, that was my point when I was talking before, that the production cost
The
and
production cost, yeah.
the production cost scenario, and then the viability of the project, then the use period of that is that how many years of the life. But if you look at the nuclear power plants, the life of the nuclear power plants, you have to take some example from Japan. Why we are not putting a nuclear power plants in Alberta for the energy? It's clean. We have a nuclear next to in our province of Saskatchewan. The problem is again the politicians is not there to serve the public. They will not teach you, or they will not do what is needed. They will only do what the corporate is telling you. So, as you are mentioning, there could be another question coming later on, that the solar power is there. Yes, we have to expand. We have to expand on a windmill, but why we are not doing the nuclear energy power plants here?
Yeah,
That will
and
be
I think
another
that's
big question, right?
interesting. Mhm.
And we don't have to go anywhere. Saskatchewan is producing all that. So when we talk about these things, when it is a business base as well. Same as I mentioned, that why we have to get expensive milk, for example. I think everyone knows we have a dairy here which produces desi ghee, right? But from where the butter is coming? The butter is coming from New Zealand
Right, and
to
not
do
from
that.
in-house, right?
So
It's not in-house.
why we can't produce in Alberta? Because supply chain management is barring them not to produce more than what they have been licensed. So this is a political system has been getting into such a close knit structural from the corporate world that politicians are only doing what their corporate masters are telling them to do. Doesn't matter which party it is. So if we really want to change the world, if we really want to change the politics in a system to serve the public first, then again, get rid of this career and entitled politicians, bring a fresh blood in to make sure that fresh blood is ready to serve. And that should be a service to the nation, service to the state.
All right. That's honestly, we've had a lot of great conversations and a lot of, I guess, insightful talks as well, because it's sometimes we do like a surface level type thing where we don't really talk about a lot of things. And I'm happy that you were able to do that with us. And before we leave here today, I have, I guess, a final question to tie everything up. Now, as you said, the cost is very high, and then not just like monetary wise, right? It's also how much carbon emissions that we produce making windmills and other renewable energy sources, right? And because now you're saying, one, the cost is high, they also don't last forever. They will eventually decommission, right? They won't be in use anymore, or they won't be efficient enough, and we have to make new ones. What do you think is at fault here? Do you think it's because we're not putting enough, I guess, effort into developing the industry? Is that what it is? Or do you think it's just like, it'll just take time and it'll just be that way because, it's just how we are?
It's every energy is every sorry business is basically designed to make a profit for that service provider and for corporation. That's a reality fact. And there is a talent out. For example, I think if you Google on YouTube, you will see that in India or other countries, people have cars running on the water on H2O system
Yeah.
on right. So is that technology not there? It is there. But if you look from the past on 40 to 50 years, the whole industry relied on traditional system. Slowly, when the environment, then they create this hype of being environment vigilant. Then all of a sudden now we are seeing the hybrid model came first. Then now we're seeing a full electrical is coming first. But if the hydrogen system is already available, if cars can run on water, why we are producing today on the cars on the electrical system, on the battery system? Why not using that hydrogen system today? But the 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 problem is this, that world will not, the politician will not give you that. For example, if you look from a healthcare system, in India, if you go on a people has to do a dialyzing, you can dialyze there for 3,000 rupees. They use the filter, they use everything. But here, it's in hundreds of dollars, the same machine to dialyze one person who is a dialysis patient, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
What it is that the industry has been developed. Same is in a cosmetic. Uh, the corporation will not give you what you need. They already have that for 20 years for the future, but they will give you in transition. Who can bring that out? Not a traditional politician will bring them out. You need a spinal politician who will tell them with force of that I am going to develop this, and this is the need. We know this system exists. We know that this is viable, and why you are holding it. But again, why they are not doing it? Because we have created the politics as a muscle and a money power together. The politics is not being generated on the will of the people's mindset. The politics is not being need today on the public's will of their education. No, I'm sorry, that's a reality. The politics is surviving on a money power and muscle power, and unfortunately the money power is also bringing the muscle power. So my point is becoming the same again. That the system exists. There is a new form of energy today, but the corporate industry will give you in phases as they have to make money, and then you have to create a job cycle. For example, when you go on a roads, right? They build one side of, first they will build one side of the ring road side, then the second one,
Yeah.
then they will do one overpass, then they will come and do second overpass. They will rebuild those overpass uh, runaways 5 times. What is that? That's a job creation. Then they will they will then upgrade it. Same thing is going on. The mode of the political system towards the service industry is on upgrading. And what that upgrading is doing, if you see, for example, the COVID vaccine, if there is ability to develop the COVID vaccine within a year, why up till today the cancer's vaccine has not been developed? Have we ever asked this question to the politicians? If the same drug which is costing in India 10 rupees, why we are paying the same cholesterol drug here for $2 or $1.50 a pill? Have we asked ever this question to the politicians? No, because those pharmaceutical companies are their biggest donors. Who's going to change that, Simran? The spinal politician who first have a knowledge himself or herself, who has a courage, who has a will to serve the public, and who has a will to change. That's why the courageous, vocal, knowledgeable politicians will not be coming forward, because the public is not willing to take them, because the media, whether whether it's in states today, you have seen, whether you are seen in India, whether we are seeing in Canada now, the media, with the help of the political parties, is changing the politics as the next organized religion. It's a wake up call for a public. And through your program today, I am honestly, humbly requesting the viewers, the listeners, wake up. Otherwise, these career cronies, entitled politicians will keep on spending your taxpayers' money at their disposal and their will, and you will not find the actual service which you deserve. They are going to serve their masters in the corporations. They are not serving the public. Until we don't have a politician who will come and service the public, till we will not encourage those peoples to come and serve as a politicians who deserve to be there, this will not change.
And I think it comes back to that it people need to be educated and they need to understand. And it sometimes it you can't rely on other people to educate you. It does come from self-educating, right? Do your research. You guys have the internet, and make sure you know, right? It's not that hard, but it's very important that you do. Now, I want to wind up things, but just Rajiv uncle, I'll call him Rajiv uncle because I just know him personally as well. But Rajiv Sharma ji, he had, I guess, another interesting fact that he wanted to share as well. That the nuclear power energy, that produces radioactive waste. such a sorry, I can't talk. It's been a
That's
long day, but
it's been a long day for me
yeah,
too. That's
yeah.
okay.
But basically, they're saying there's a
Why?
lot of, I guess, radioactive waste that gets produced, and he was saying, that it sometimes it gets dangerous. That's why the government might not want to take risk. I guess I just want to wind things up, so I'll just answer that really quickly. I personally think that there's a lot of factors involved, and it's sometimes it gets very hard to like look at everything because it takes effort, and you need to look at things from all sides, right? Um, my personal belief is that the reason why I asked you that question earlier as well, Happy G, is about like, do you think the industry needs to be developed more? Because I think once we, I guess, look into it more, we research more things, we develop new technologies. Of course, it'll get better, it'll get safer, but the steps need to be taken, and it doesn't mean that we have to do it ourselves. We could also take example, and I guess we can also leverage other people's like learnings and discoveries, from other countries as well, because we're not alone. At the end of the day, I know we talk about being Albertans, being Canadians, but at the end of the day, we are talking about global issues. It's not only about Canada. It's not only about Alberta. We are talking about global issues, right? So we have to look at all those different angles and how they fit in together. Is there anything you want to say about that really quickly before we
Of
head off here?
course, I will just wrap up in 1 minute by saying that is, if you look at every single medicine you are taking, and if you research that, and they will say this is the side effect of this medicine, and we still take it because we know it's secure to it, right? So the side effect of anything is there, whether the side effect of oil, traditional oil and gas towards the climate, whether the side effect of windmill or solar towards the climate, same the side effects going to be for the nuclear also. And there is no doubt that there's not going to be a side effect. But we always, as a human beings, we take a calculated risk, and
Yeah.
calculated risk can be taken from a technology base. Today, if you look at the newer technology with the countries who are developing the nuclear power plants with the newer technology, and if you look at the that sector 20 years ago, it's different. So side effect for everything is there. If we have not stopped by taking the medicine, by knowing all that side effects are there, we are still same in the politics. We know every politician who's been a career politician, they're gonna serve their masters, but we still take a chance and vote for that person.
Yeah,
so
and I
so we've
yeah.
been we've been taking a chances. Mankind is like that always, that our tradition of that. And you know why is that, Simran? I have to elaborate more into that by giving you the example of two different historics. Is people often say about the slavery, when they talk about the slavery, where the first thing comes to their mind is about the African nation, right? But how many individuals know that there is a slavery of the Irish people? When people talk about the World War II era or the Brit era, people talk about intoxicating of other things. But how many of today knows about the Opium War of China? So those are the two historics which has been totally away from the history. The reason I'm giving this example is that there is always the other side of the story. There is always a risk factor to it, but reality is we don't know why we are doing it. And the reason why we are doing this is that we have to take a medicine knowing that there's a side effect, then there will be a new medicine to cure that side effect. This is a business. And why this business become the two bigger industries today is a cosmetic and medicine, right? Health industry and cosmetic industry is growing biggest industry. And who are the culprit of it? We ourselves, because we stopped the traditional systems of it. And who did that to us? To corporate world, right? Corporate world has taken a cheaper labor from the farming to the bigger industries, to the bigger cities as a cheap labor for their industries, right? That's why if you look at today's farmers agitation, the biggest fear is that why they want to do it. They want to bring the cheaper labor. There is a one world agenda, and all that. Like I can go on the Simra for 5 hours discussing politics with with you on a different global issues. But the reality is this, that the mindset of the money power and muscle power to create to control the public through the political agenda is settled, and to create a transition of the mankind is settled through health industry, through drugs, or through medicines. Until and unless we as a nation won't wake up, we as a nation won't अपना घर पे नु सवारना पैना. We have to first treat ourselves. The best cure is to cure yourself. That's the biggest thing. We have to start curing ourselves, then we will start curing our neighbors, when we'll start curing our city, our nation. So do is that knowing that there is a side effect of everything, then denying what is available is, it should not be that. But yes, a proper investigation is needed, and what is available needs to be presented to the public. And there should be a laws created that if there is a technology available, we should have a government funds for that technology, so that technology be available to the for the best use of the public and the cheapest use of the public immediately. And not for, like, when you have a hybrid cars came first, where the
Mhm.
price was, and you will see the price declining, right, slowly and gradually. So we have to take a business model out of daily individuals living. And right now what is happening is we are making our livelihood expensive. And who are helping those corporates to make your life expensive? Politicians.
Yeah, and it all just goes back to what we were saying, right? Just make sure you know, keep educated, and make sure you keep people in check because, as hard as it might seem, right? It may seem that what you do is not impactful enough, but
Yeah.
that's how our system is based, right? You talk to people, they talk to other people, like you guys share the same views. That becomes a bigger movement. And I think it just comes back to that, just being a little bit more woke. I guess that's the term that we sometimes use. And before we go off, I just want to thank you, Rajivji, for all your questions. And I guess in Rajivji's, I guess, favor as well, I just wanted to say, sometimes we do get stuck in the cycle of what if, right? And then we don't do anything, for it because we're always stuck in the what if, and we don't take. I think the term that you use were calculated risks. They are calculated. They might be risk, but they need to be calculated as well. Where we're ready for anything that bad that happens, but we're not going into something blindly, right? We're having the knowledge base. If we're talking about specifically nuclear plants, right? We have the knowledge base to develop those, but then if something was to go wrong, we have precautions that we take, or if we have like a safety net to, I guess we don't have a disaster, right? And COVID-19 is already enough.
Naturally.
But that's just me on that. So before we end off, I just want to say thank you, Happy G, for coming on our podcast and giving us a wonderful episode. There's a lot of good thoughts and a lot of good talking. And I know we get a little philosophical at the end, but that's just the nature of it. And once you keep on digging deeper, that's what you come to. And again, lastly, just thank you very much. And is there anything you want to say before we head off here for tonight?
My pleasure. It's very very much humbling to be on your show, and anytime again. I did a shows on Punjabi, and it was a wish that let's do it in a different language, in English too. And Rajiv ji, thank you. I mean have not really answered the way you want me to answer, but it's a good discussion through your questions. It was very enlightening, and same Simran, it was pleasure having. Have this show, and thank you so much for giving me this time and opportunity to reach out to the public.
Yeah, no, always, and just to our viewers as well, the people that are watching right now, I think one person just joined. We're gonna end off here now, and again, as always, we try to give you guys something that's not boring, something new, right, and something that's little bit more helpful to you, and not just, I guess, for stirring up, I guess, conflict, and
I
something
have
that you
given you
wanted to
to
patient.
10 different topic. I have given you 10 different topics, and next time we will be a topic
Yeah,
specific.
yeah. Because I mean, it was nice though. It was, I guess, a good foundation for perhaps our next interaction with you. But anyways, I guess we don't want to keep you any longer, so we'll
Thank you so much. Sat
end
Sri
it off
Akal.
here. So, Sashika Saturji, and we'll see everybody next week again on Saturday at
Thank you so much.
6:45. And thank you for everybody joining. See you,
Thank
everybody.
you.